Okay, Dan, you have worked with the Kochs on political issues for quite a long time. Is it a good idea for them to break with the president?
Sure. So first, I mean, I'm wondering now if the table is made by the Koch
It may well be.
It might be. It might be.
But no, I mean, I don't think it is. I think they're getting a lot of what they want out of the Trump administration. I think on judicial appointments. I think on the tax reform package. I think on regulatory rollback. I think Trump is a win-win-win. I think they disagree with him on trade. I think they disagree with him on immigration. But you know, no one's perfect, and you're not going to get 100%. No one's going to get 100% of what they want out of the government. So I kind of question, you know, their strategy and what exactly they're trying to accomplish here.
You mentioned something in the break, and that was that, you know, when you look back at the last election, you look at Donald Trump and you look at Bernie Sanders, both of them did very well without these old corporate contacts and super PACs. Obviously, during the election, there were a lot of super PACs and lobbying groups that backed President Trump. But are the Kochs as influential, and the group that you're part of, are they as influential as they once were, given that so many people get their stuff out of social media as opposed to TV advertising or billboards?
Well, I think they're very influential, and I think the president is a little bit astray on that. I think they have an enormous amount of influence and the ability to energize people and amass donations. But I think that the donations are a little bit less important than they used to be. I think you see that in Donald Trump's campaign. I think you see that in Bernie Sanders' campaign, that the kind of donor establishment is maybe a little bit weaker than it was. I also think that you know, this whole spat between the Kochs and Trump really shows that Trump is independent. He's what the voters voted for, and that he's independent. He's shaking Washington up, and he's really not a part of the old money establishment, so to speak. And he's really independent.
So you're not with the Kochs on them wanting to split with the president, especially on tariffs?
Well, I'm more with the president than I am the Kochs, but I think that the Kochs really have a place in the party. But I think that they just want a little bit of distance with the president, and I think that the president is doing a good job, and it's easier to be the Kochs.
You know, can I just ask one question? It weighs on me. As it relates to, you think the president is doing really well in terms of deregulation and the economy. Why is it that he lies about it all the time then? On Friday, I keep going back to it, you know, GDP numbers, 4.2, that's great. Why doesn't the president just take that as a win? Why does he continue to lie and say Obama never did that when we all know he did it 5 times?
Well, I disagree with the premise, but I think that it's a complicated world.
What do you disagree about?
I don't think the president lies. I think
he lies 16 times a day on average, according to brand new fact-checking by the Washington Post, which is up from 5 times a day on average. I mean, he lies. You got to admit he lies. Come on.
I think he's trying to amass all this.
I mean, he said it hasn't happened before.
He said it has never happened before. In terms of the economy,
4.2%.
the economy has not been this strong since World War II. You know that's not true.
Well, I think it depends on the indicator you pick, but I do admit that there was, you know, GDP growth, you know, similar to the 4.1 number, you know, a few times in the Obama administration. So
why does he lie about it since the economy is such a win for him?
Well, I think the economy is a win for him, and I think he's pushing, you know, his view of the facts.
I know you're not answering my question. Why does he lie about the economy? When
you wouldn't have to lie.
I don't think he has to lie about the economy.
Correct.
You're right.
We're on the same side.
The economy is doing great.
We're with you. So why does he lie about it?
I think he's saying the facts as he sees them and as he remembers them.
When you say seeing the facts as he sees them, doesn't make sense. Something is either a fact or it's not. And it is not a fact that we didn't see over 4% GDP.
I'm going to ask the control room, just cue up that thing that we did on Monday after the president's speech, because I've got fact after fact after fact after fact after fact that the president lied about on Friday morning. I mean, we know he lies. We can't get into that discussion. The president lies.
Figure out
the Washington Post says
lies.
16 times a day now. I mean, we can question their stuff, but it's some number of times, right? Listen, 4,229 false or misleading claims in 558 days, which is an average now of 7.6.
He calls Robert Mueller a Democrat. He says the Robert Mueller investigation is run by 12 or 13 angry Democrats. That's not true. He calls it a rigged witch hunt. There have been 35 plea deals or indictments. That's just a lie, sir. And I just don't understand why he lies. Because, to your point, there are many policies that are good for many parts of the country. So why does he continue to lie?
So, again, I disagree with the premise of the question. I think the economy is good, and I think that he can make that point.
No, that's not what my question is. I just rattled off to you a number of flat-out lies the president tells. Why does the president lie?
I don't think the president lies. I think he's saying the facts as he sees them and as he remembers them, and I think that it's a big job and a lot of information. He's trying to synthesize all that information.
We appreciate you coming on. You're not answering our question, and there's no such a thing as a fact as you see them. There's a fact and there's a lie.
Oh, you can't do that in your company, right? That'd be illegal, actually, if you lied about your company's performance.
Well, I don't know if it'd be illegal or not, but I think we have our numbers and we put out our numbers and people accept them or don't.
But they can't be incorrect.
Well, they can't be incorrect.
Right. So the president says incorrect things about the American economy. Shouldn't he be held to at least the same standard that a CEO is?
Well, I think that's what the media is trying to do, right?
Right.
No.
So when we fact check him, we should be holding. You agree that he should be held to the same standard, right?
I think he should be held to the same standard, and I think that it's a free press, and you guys have the right to fact check him.
All right. So to an earlier point that we were making, and that Phil Bump was making here, the president is appealing on one side to the likes of corporate executives or people who are in the business world. On the other side, he's appealing to cultural things that people appreciate, the culture wars that he's involved into. That seems to be where the Kochs are separating from him. That's what they don't want to get involved in. Where do you come down on that?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that there's a big difference in the Republican Party right now in the donor class and what the kind of establishment Republicans want and Trump's base, and I think there's definitely a big fissure there. And Trump is accelerating he's doubling down on his support for the base, and he's defending what his base wants, but it really is not necessarily settling well with the donor class in the Republican Party.
He goes to rallies and he speaks and he inspires his base. And I understand how
Without
he
a
does
doubt.
that. But when you actually look at policies, so let's take the tax cut, for example. The tax cuts are supposed to trickle down. We have not yet seen them trickle down in terms of wages and to the American worker. And now they're mulling over tax cut 2.0, where they would inflation adjust capital gains tax. That absolutely helps the donor class. They'd be thrilled about it. But if you're Trump's base, if you're the American worker who has still not seen his or her wages going up, it doesn't help you. So there's
I think we're seeing the wages go up. I believe wages are up something near 2% since Trump took office.
No, wages are down. Inflation-adjusted wages are down.
Okay, well,
Again, this is my problem. That Donald Trump says it, you somehow listen to it.
No, I think
we have evidence wages are down.
No, I mean I've seen data. I've seen data recently on the average pay of workers that's gone up. I also know that I
think what you're referencing is ECI, and ECI accounts for the entire worker. So, for example, if the cost of health care for that worker also goes up, it looks as though they've gone up, when in fact their wages haven't. It actually just costs more to employ them. So that's not really good data.
Okay, well, I think it is good data, and I do think it shows, in general, wages going up. I can also speak to, my company. Our wages are up about 10 to 11% since the beginning of 2017.
Did you have minimum wage employees?
Some, and definitely a lot close to the minimum wage. We're an industrial business.
Right.
We appreciate that.
So wage growth under Trump is lower than it was under Obama. If you just take the last 18 months of the Obama administration, the first 18 months of the Trump administration. So it's not up. Again, these are the questions. Does he win in the cultural war if people don't see economic gains? And how do you blend that when you're a Republican donor? Because he's got a whole lot of people who are not gaining economically, but they like the culture war.
I do think he wins, and I also point to the unemployment numbers are also down since he got into office, and so I think wages and whether wages have gone up or not, which I think they have a little bit, is important. But the unemployment number and the number of people that are working is also a huge factor. I also think that Trump has got.
Let me just show you. We just got this. This is the wage growth numbers under Trump. So you can see the black line is wage growth under Obama, and you can see in 2009 during the recession, you see how that dropped dramatically. There was negative wage growth because of the recession, and you saw negative wage growth until about 2013, 14. You saw a little bit of it. Then in 15 and 16, look at that, 15, 16, 17, and then look what happened under Trump.
And I'll say, I'm
wage growth
thrilled.
is not anywhere close to where it was under Obama.
I'm thrilled about the jobs number. I think it is great. I think it's amazing where we are.
But it's a continuation.
On unemployment. It's a continuation. Here's one thing that I don't get that maybe you could help me understand. Unemployment is super low. The president is saying all of these great Americans have jobs. How do you square that off with saying we don't want any of these immigrants from Mexico and El Salvador and Honduras because they're stealing all of our jobs? So how is it that immigrants are stealing all of our jobs if the American unemployment picture is so good and Americans all are fat and happy and back to work?
I don't think that immigrants are stealing all of our jobs. from my standpoint, I own several businesses, and I don't have enough labor. I have many hundreds of open positions right now.
So you're in the same place as the Koch brothers on that.
Yes.
So that's one of the reasons why they split with some candidates that the president is supporting, or some Republican candidates, right? So how do you think that the gain for supporting Donald Trump for the Kochs is better than?
Well, sure. I think they're getting a lot more of what they want: regulatory rollback, conservative judicial nominations, and the tax reform package. And they wouldn't have gotten any of those things under a Hillary Clinton administration. So I think
a great point.
On 3 of 5 or 3 of 6 issues, I think they're getting exactly what they want.
Then where do you think President Trump comes from with this immigration stance? If we agree that the jobs problem in this country is we don't have enough people, we don't have enough labor force, and if we had more qualified people, whether they're Americans or immigrants, it would be better for jobs. Why do you think the president has such a different stance on immigration, and he looks at foreigners as though they're just here to steal our work?
Well, I don't think it's quite as simple as that. I think the president looks at the immigration situation as a broken system that our politicians haven't been honest with us about, and it needs to be fixed. We can't have 11 million or 13 million people undocumented in this country. We need some kind of a solution. We need some kind of a solution for people just walking across the border, where people from India that fill out all the paperwork are, frustrated and can't, wait years for an answer.
And does a wall solve that?
A wall could partially solve it, but it's more about the wall. The wall is symbolic for proper enforcement and proper.
So you want to spend $25 billion on symbolism?
Let me go over here for a second, because Dan said that he doesn't believe that the president's got his own facts. This is hiring under the last 18 months of the Obama administration and the first 18 months of the Trump administration. You can see here the average evened out over the last 18 months was 206,000 jobs a month. Under the Trump administration, it's 193,000 a month. So that's the Obama administration. That's the Trump administration. I want to take a look at wages as well, if I can just show you that number. So that's one thing the president lied about the other day. I already showed you one. This is the wage growth issue. Wage growth under Obama was here a little under 1%. It's not fantastic. Under Trump, it's significantly lower. It's actually about half from a percentage basis. So again, you're a CEO, we're journalists, we have access to these facts. The president says otherwise. These are lies. And the White House is welcome to join me at any point, or Stephanie at any point, to tell us that our numbers are wrong, but these are well-researched numbers.
And if you want to talk about the power of deregulation or the judicial appointments, that's fine. Where we're getting in a real problem in this country is when we support ideas that the president has his own set of facts. There's just no such thing as one's own set of facts, sir.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. But
that's what you said to us 5 minutes ago.
Okay, I agree with that. But what I think is, that there's.
You said to us.
Let him finish.
Look, I think that there's a bunch of facts out there. There's a bunch of different data sets out there.
Sure.
But I think that you guys are showing these facts. But what about where's a chart on the screen about the unemployment number?
We can do that too. We can pull that up.
The unemployment number is fantastic.
I think that's a great fact, and I think that it's accelerated.
This is the Bureau of Labor Statistics, by the way. These facts are not ours. They're the U.S. government's.
I think.
We're with you. The unemployment number is fantastic.
Look, the GDP number in the first 5 quarters of Trump being in office is about 2.55%. The GDP growth during the entire Obama administration was 2.08%.
Correct.
Right? So we're getting an acceleration in economic growth, and I personally think the economic growth is accelerating.
I think we can agree on that.
Inventory numbers are down. Labor is very,
but this last quarter was weird, right? Because we sold way more soybeans to everybody than we'd ever buy. That's not going to sustain. That's because of the tariffs. So most economists agree that
the 90 billion increase in the GDP number. The increase in exports is only about 12% or 20% of that 90 billion. So that's not a complete solution.
Right. So when you shave it all out, we're back to around the 2 and change percent that you talked about. So we're on trend.
And declining inventory numbers. And I think that's the declining inventory numbers in the Q2 GDP growth are where I think there's going to be an acceleration. There's room for an acceleration in Q3 and Q4.
So if we end up at a roughly 3% number, that's good. We celebrate that.
Did Obama ever achieve a 3% GDP growth number during his 8 years? No.
He did quarterly. On a quarterly level, he did it many times, but not on an annual basis.
And Trump is going to do it on an annual basis.
But I guess that's just what sticks out to me, and I know we're going to leave it there. Everything that you're saying, these are positives. These are very positive trends in our economy. So when you talk about GDP for a quarter and President Trump gets above 4%, we're applauding him and we're saying, great, let's see where we go next quarter. But when he immediately follows that up with Obama never did it, this has never been done, and his son Don Jr. repeats that, that's where we're simply confused.
Because then we get caught up having to correct it.
Maybe this is why the Koch brothers do have somewhat of a split, because it simply doesn't need to make sense. You don't need to lie when you're doing something that's working. And as far as the economy goes, those numbers are working. We would just love to keep
I think the economy is
honest.
working. I think that the difference the Kochs have with Trump, I think, is specifically on immigration and specifically on trade.
And some social policy issues.
And some social
They're not
policies
social
in general. And
conservatives,
I also think that the Kochs do a lot to help communities help themselves that's really underreported by the media. You know, they're
Well,
out
we
there.
point out they're the biggest donors in New York City, the biggest charitable donors in New York City.
They do an awful lot
Yeah.
for communities
Absolutely
around the
they
country,
do.
and I think that's amazing too. But
Their focus on jobs of the future is extraordinary, especially if you compare it to President Trump, who wants to bring back whole jobs, which are neither economic or environmentally sound.
yeah, I think a lot of, look, the manufacturing job loss, we didn't lose those jobs to immigrants. We didn't lose those jobs to illegal immigrants. We lost those jobs to automation and to robotics. You know, even at our company, we're doing more with automation, more with robotic arms. And that's
The
really...
president doesn't share your view on that. Right? I mean, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, no,
the
I mean,
folks share your view on that. A lot of Republicans share your view on that. That's the correct view. The president seems to want to blame immigrants.
Yeah. So if you're a low-wage employee and you're underskilled, you've got to really worry about AI, artificial intelligence, and you've really got to worry about robotics and how that's going to negatively impact the amount of jobs we have for entry-level people
And
in
we
this
should
country moving
appreciate
forward.
that the Perkins law, I guess the Perkins bill was just signed just a couple of days ago, and I want to say that's $11 billion that's going into workforce training. President Trump and AI,
I told
I've never heard him talk about
he
it.
agrees with us in the end.
Yeah, well, I agree with a lot of what you said, but I think that the Trump economy is roaring and is going to continue to roar.
Our frustration is that if I were Donald Trump's press secretary, I would say all the things about the Trump economy that was roaring, and I would prevent him from making any lies about it. So that
I think you'd had a lot of frustrations if you were Donald Trump's press secretary.
Yeah.
That's fair. That is fair. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
joining
That
us.
point,
We really,
we will
really
end the
appreciate
discussion.
it.
Dan, we
really
appreciate
it.
Thank
you sitting here and debating this with us. Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.